The metal chain scraped against the iron gate as Pamela pulled again, harder this time. The padlocks did not move. 3 of them, new, heavy, gleaming like they had never known rust, hung on the door of the house she had lived in for 7 years. A stranger sat calmly on her porch, legs crossed, sipping tea from her favorite ceramic cup. Inside the living room, the curtains she stitched herself shifted faintly in the night breeze, but the key in Pamela's shaking hand no longer belonged to anything. If stories like this keep you awake at night, support the channel, subscribe, and leave a comment telling where you're watching from across the world. Pamela Nwoy built beauty for a living. Not the temporary beauty of trends, but the kind preserved in framed wedding photographs hung in family homes for generations. She designed bridal gowns, layered silk, hand-beaded bodices, and laced trains so delicate they could pass through a ring. Lagos socialites waited months for fittings. Influencers begged for appointments. Politicians' daughters booked a year in advance. Her studio, House of Pamela, stood on the top floor of a renovated colonial building overlooking a busy street of fabric merchants. The scent of steamed satin and pressed cotton permanently filled the air. Rolls of osso oak, tulle, and organza leaned against the walls like quiet witnesses to ambition. She rarely slept more than 5 hours, but she loved every minute. Daniel did not. At the beginning, he pretended to. They met at a mutual friend's birthday party, the kind with too loud Afrobeats and too bright lighting, where introductions disappeared into laughter. Daniel admired how people approach her one after another, praising dresses she designed for weddings he had seen on Instagram. "You're famous," he had said jokingly. "I'm busy," she replied. He laughed. At the time, it sounded like admiration. Daniel worked in import logistics, or at least that was how he described it. He dressed well, spoke confidently, and always had just enough money to appear comfortable without revealing details. He drove a leased SUV and always paid restaurant bills before she reached her purse. He courted her patiently. Flowers arrived weekly. Late-night food deliveries came during stressful production weeks. He waited outside her studio sometimes, holding takeaway coffee as she finished fittings. For the first year, he seemed proud of her success. "You'll design my sister's wedding dress one day," he would say, but admiration slowly shifted into measurement. At dinner, he began asking how many male clients she worked with. At first she laughed. "Grooms exist, Daniel." Then the questions changed. Why did she travel for fittings? Why did celebrities request private appointments? Why did she come home late after runway rehearsals? Why did men hug her? It was small at first, comments disguised as jokes. "You designers live wild lives. You must enjoy the attention. You'll forget ordinary men like me." She brushed it aside. Business required presence. Her clients trusted her with intimate moments, engagements, weddings, red carpet appearances. She adjusted veils, pinned waistlines, and sometimes wiped tears from nervous brides. To her, work was human connection. To Daniel, it became suspicion. After their wedding, a modest ceremony compared to the events she designed for others, the shift accelerated. They moved into the house she inherited from her late parents in Port Harcourt. She renovated it years before she met him. Gray walls, wide windows, a sewing room she converted into a personal design space for private commissions. The first month of marriage was peaceful. By the 3rd month, Daniel began suggesting she slow down. "You don't need to work this hard anymore," he said one evening, watching her sketch designs on the dining table. "I earn enough." She didn't look up. "I don't work because I need money. You're a married woman now." She stopped drawing. "I was also a business owner before marriage." He smiled, but not warmly. "I just think a home needs presence." She explained deadlines. International clients. Fabric shipments already paid for. Wedding scheduled. He nodded, but continued raising the topic weekly. Then daily. Every wife eventually prioritizes family. "I will. I'm not quitting my career." "You don't have to quit. Just reduce dramatically." Soon the suggestions hardened into demands. He accused her of choosing strangers over marriage because she attended fittings instead of afternoon lunches. He complained when she traveled to Abuja for a bridal consultation. One night, After she returned from a late runway rehearsal, she found him awake in the dark living room. "Who drove you home?" he asked. "My assistant and the production driver." "You know this." "Was the musician there?" "The one whose fiancé keeps calling." She stared at him. "He is my client." Daniel leaned forward. "You spend hours alone with wealthy men. Don't insult me by pretending it's only fabric." Silence stretched. "You think I'm cheating?" she asked calmly. "I think attention changes people." From then on, accusations replaced conversation. He checked her phone while she showered. He demanded passwords. He called during fittings repeatedly until she answered. Sometimes he arrived unannounced at her studio, greeting staff politely while scanning the room for imagined secrets. Her assistants noticed. Clients noticed. She stopped explaining to them. At home, arguments followed predictable patterns. "You never hear. I'm building something." "For who?" "Other men." "For myself." "You act single." "I act independent." His voice often rose. Hers rarely did. That unsettled him more. Weeks later, he proposed a final condition. "Choose the business or the marriage." She closed her laptop slowly. "A marriage that requires me to erase myself is already broken." From that day, Daniel changed. He stopped asking her to quit. Instead, he began telling others she already had. To his friends, he hinted she entertained celebrity clients privately. To neighbors, he joked she loved attention too much. To relatives, he implied late nights meant betrayal. She learned this gradually, through awkward conversations, sudden coldness from people who once admired her discipline. When she confronted him, he shrugged. "If you behave like a wife, I wouldn't defend myself." Months passed under tension thick as humidity. Then came the night she worked a 14-hour shift finishing 6 bridal gowns before a society wedding. By the time she left the studio, generators hummed across the city and traffic lights blinked yellow. She drove home exhausted but satisfied. Another milestone completed. The street was unusually quiet. Her headlights swept across the compound gate and stopped. Chains. At first she assumed a mistake. Perhaps a security repair. She stepped out of the car, heels clicking against the pavement. The front door carried 3 heavy padlocks. Her key did not fit any of them. The porch light turned on. A woman sat in her chair. Not nervous, not confused, comfortable. She wore a loose house dress and held a mug Pamela bought from a craft market in Calabar. Steam rose from it. "You must be Pamela," the woman said gently. Pamela's throat tightened. "Who are you?" The woman smiled, almost sympathetically. "My name is Bianca. I live here." The words floated without meaning. Pamela approached slowly, as if closer distance would rearrange reality into sense. "This is my house." Bianca took a careful sip. "Daniel said you'd react emotionally." The air left Pamela's lungs. She stared at the locked door, the curtains she chose, the plant she watered every morning now beside someone else's slippers. "You should leave peacefully," Bianca added. "He said the marriage is over." For the first time in months, Pamela felt no anger. Only clarity forming, cold and precise, like the clean cut of tailor's scissors through silk. Pamela did not raise her voice. She stood at the foot of the porch steps, her car engine still running behind her, headlights stretching her shadow across the compound she paid for long before she knew Daniel existed. Bianca shifted slightly in the chair, studying her face as though expecting shouting, crying, or pleading. Instead, Pamela reached into her handbag and pulled out her phone. She dialed. Inside the house, a ringtone echoed faintly. A few seconds later, the curtain moved and Daniel stepped out onto the veranda. He wore house slippers, her guest slippers, and a loose shirt she ironed 2 days earlier. His expression carried irritation rather than shame, as if she had interrupted something trivial. "You're late," he said. Pamela looked at him carefully, almost clinically, the way she studied fabric flaws before cutting. "I had work," she replied. "Open the door." Daniel leaned against the pillar. "We need to talk first." She waited. The night insects buzzed around the porch light. A distant generator coughed in another compound. Nothing else moved. "The marriage has failed," Daniel said flatly. Bianca folded her arms, nodding slowly as if she had rehearsed this moment in her mind many times. Pamela did not react. Daniel continued, voice growing louder, stronger with each sentence. I warned you. You chose your lifestyle over your home. Over me. I can't live with a woman who spends nights entertaining men and calling it business. Pamela's gaze did not shift. You've been cheating from the beginning, he added. Everyone knows. Clients, musicians, politicians, you think I'm blind? Bianca leaned forward eagerly. He endured too much. A man deserves respect. Pamela finally spoke. Open the door. Daniel laughed softly. You still don't understand. This is our house, not just yours. Marriage makes everything shared. She tilted her head slightly. Our house. Yes, he said firmly. I live here. Bianca lives here. You can collect your things later after we arrange separation. Bianca placed a protective hand over her stomach. I'm carrying his child, she said gently, almost apologetic but with unmistakable pride. He chose stability. The sentence hung in the humid air. For the first time, Daniel watched Pamela closely, waiting for collapse, tears, rage, or panic. Instead, she walked up the steps and stopped just short of them. Her voice remained calm, steady enough to quiet even the insects in the moment between sounds. I bought this house 5 years before I met you. Daniel's smile faded slightly. With my inheritance, she continued. The deed is in my name alone. He straightened. We're married. Property becomes marital property. Bianca nodded quickly. Exactly. Law supports husbands. Pamela looked at her, not unkindly. You should be careful repeating legal conclusions you haven't verified. Daniel's jaw tightened. Don't try to intimidate her with your education tone. I know my rights. Pamela held his gaze. Good. She unlocked her phone again and scrolled through contacts. Daniel crossed his arms. Calling your clients? Your admirers? No one will solve this tonight. She pressed call and lifted it to her ear. After a few rings, a voice answered. Hello, Pamela. Her tone softened slightly. Lydia, I need you to come to my house immediately. Daniel's posture shifted. Bianca frowned. Who is Lydia? Pamela didn't look away from him. Your sister. Silence. On the other end, Lydia's voice sharpened. What happened? I've been locked out of my property. Daniel claims ownership. She paused. Bring the deed and property registration documents from the file cabinet. The blue folder. Daniel stepped forward quickly. There's no need to involve my family. Pamela raised a hand slightly, stopping him without touching him. Lydia spoke again through the phone, now fully alert. I'm leaving now. The call ended. Bianca looked between them. Why a lawyer? Pamela replied. Because tonight isn't about emotions. It's about facts. Daniel forced a laugh. You think papers change reality? Marriage changes reality. Pamela finally climbed the remaining step onto the veranda. She stood beside the locked door, resting her palm lightly against the wood. This house was renovated 2 years before I met you, she said. Every tile, every window, every cabinet, documented and paid in full. Daniel shook his head. Irrelevant. No, she said quietly. Very relevant. You tried a different tone, softer, coaxing. Pamela, don't embarrass yourself. Take some clothes and go to your studio for now. We'll settle things privately. Bianca added, it's better for everyone, especially the baby. Pamela looked at the padlocks. 3 locks, she said. You planned this carefully. Daniel didn't respond. She turned back to him. Then we'll also handle it carefully. The compound fell into waiting. Minutes passed slowly. A passing car's headlights swept the street and disappeared. Somewhere a dog barked twice and went silent again. Daniel paced once across the veranda. You're escalating a simple matter. You locked me out of my own home. It's our home. We'll confirm that soon. Bianca shifted uneasily now, confidence beginning to thin. Maybe we should talk inside when she calms down. Pamela met her eyes. You will not enter that house again once the documents arrive. Daniel exhaled sharply. You're dramatic. No, she said. I'm prepared. In the distance, headlights turned into the street and approached steadily toward the compound gate. Pamela did not look back at the road. She kept her eyes on Daniel as the car rolled closer and stopped outside. The engine outside went silent. Car doors closed. Footsteps approached the gate. Quick, purposeful, not hesitant. The kind of walk that carried decision before conversation. Daniel's shoulders stiffened. Bianca stood from the chair, suddenly uncertain, smoothing her dress as if presentation could correct unfolding events. The gate opened and Lydia stepped in, still holding her handbag and a flat document case pressed firmly against her side. She wore no makeup except a faint line of lipstick, but authority traveled with her more loudly than any appearance could. Her eyes moved once across the scene. The chains, the padlocks, Pamela standing by the door, Daniel near the pillar, Bianca on the porch. She exhaled slowly. "Daniel," she said quietly, "explain." He forced composure. "Family matter. No need for legal drama." Lydia did not look at him again. Instead, she walked directly to Pamela. "You're all right." "I'm fine," Pamela replied. "I just need clarity." Lydia nodded and held the folder tighter, but did not open it yet. Pamela turned slightly toward Bianca. "You should hear something before we proceed," she said calmly. Daniel frowned. "This isn't a court." "No," Pamela replied. "But truth doesn't require a courtroom." She looked at Bianca steadily. "You were told Daniel owns businesses." Bianca hesitated. "He manages logistics contracts." Pamela shook her head gently. "He used my business address to apply for credit lines." Daniel's voice hardened. "Stop," she continued. "He registered loans using forged partnership agreements. My company name appears as collateral in 3 financial institutions." Bianca's face drained. "What?" Daniel stepped closer. "She's lying because she's jealous." Pamela reached in her bag and removed printed statements, creased for being handled often. "I started receiving recovery calls 2 months ago," she said. "I assumed identity error until the signatures were compared." She handed one sheet to Lydia, who glanced quickly and closed her eyes briefly, already understanding. "Daniel," Lydia said lowly, "you forged corporate consent?" He snapped. "It's complicated." Pamela faced Bianca again. "The SUV he drives isn't leased privately. It's under a business loan guaranteed against projected income from my contracts." Bianca's breathing changed. "You said it was your company vehicle." Daniel's composure cracked. "Don't listen to her." Pamela spoke without emotion. "The house was his next step." Silence thickened. "He requested marriage certificate copies from the registry 3 weeks ago," she continued, "then tried to initiate property co-ownership filing." Lydia looked sharply at him. "You attempted spousal property conversion?" Daniel's eyes flickered. "Perfectly legal." Pamela shook her head. "Except you submitted a backdated purchase agreement before our marriage, with a forged signature pretending we bought the house jointly." Bianca staggered back a step, gripping the chair. "You said the house was yours already," she whispered. Daniel looked between them rapidly. "Technical process. Paperwork adjustments." Pamela's voice remained steady. "The bank flagged inconsistencies. That is why recovery agents began calling." She held his gaze now. "You weren't moving me out because the marriage failed." She gestured toward the locks. "You needed possession." Bianca stared at him, disbelief breaking through loyalty. "You said she was unfaithful, that you suffered." Daniel's voice rose defensively. "She humiliates me with rich men daily." Pamela didn't react. Lydia finally opened the document case. But before she spoke, flashing blue lights reflected faintly across the compound wall. Everyone turned. A police vehicle slowed outside the gate. Daniel froze. Lydia closed the folder again and spoke calmly, almost tired. "I called them on my way here." The officers entered the compound, their boots crunching softly on gravel. One of them nodded respectfully to Lydia. "Barrister, you reported trespass and suspected fraud." Daniel stepped backward. "This is unnecessary." Pamela moved aside from the doorway. Lydia opened the folder and removed a stamped document sealed in transparent protection. She handed it to the officer. "Certificate of occupancy," she said. "Purchased solely by Pamela and Woy, 5 years prior to marriage. No joint ownership. No transfer." The officer examined it carefully under the porch light, then looked at Daniel. "You changed locks on property not legally yours?" Daniel tried to recover confidence. "We're married. It's domestic." Lydia answered before the officer could. Marriage does not create retroactive ownership, and forged filings have already been reported. The second officer approached the door, examining the chains. Bianca's voice trembled. Daniel, tell them it's a mistake. He didn't respond. Pamela watched quietly as reality arranged itself without anger. The officer returned the document to Lydia and turned to Daniel. Sir, you'll come with us. Daniel's composure finally collapsed. This is my home. The officer gestured at the locks. Not according to the law. Another officer gently addressed Bianca. Madam, you must vacate immediately. Tears gathered in her eyes as she stepped off the porch, avoiding Pamela's gaze entirely now. Daniel tried once more, voice sharp. Pamela, stop this. We can settle privately. She shook her head once. You already tried privately. The officers took his arm. He resisted briefly, not violently, but desperately, the confidence gone from his posture. As they led him toward the gate, the chains on the door rattled softly in the night breeze, no longer symbols of control, but evidence. The police vehicle door opened. Daniel looked back one last time, searching Pamela's face for hesitation. He found none. The door shut. The car pulled away, and the compound finally became quiet again. The silence after the police vehicle left did not feel peaceful. It felt surgical. The chains still hung on the door, and Lydia remained standing beside Pamela, holding the document folder against her chest. The night air moved the curtains inside the living room through the slightly open window, the same room Daniel had just claimed as his. Pamela did not rush forward to unlock the door. Instead, she stood still, absorbing the absence of him. Let's not touch anything yet, Lydia said quietly. We need it preserved. Pamela nodded. Within 30 minutes, another car arrived. Not police this time, but investigators from the Financial Crimes Unit. Lydia had made additional calls while the first officers escorted Daniel away. The men stepped into the compound, carrying small cameras and evidence bags. One of them addressed Pamela politely. We'll document the entry point before you regain access. She handed over her keys and stepped back. The chains were photographed, the padlocks inspected, marks on the doorframe recorded. Every detail mattered now. The locks were cut carefully, not broken recklessly. Each metal piece went in a label bags. When the door finally opened, the living room revealed nothing unusual at first glance. Cushions arranged, television remote on the table, Daniel's shoes near the staircase. But investigation rarely looked for the obvious. They moved methodically. The study drawer was opened first. Inside were printed documents Pamela had never seen. Photocopies of her identification, her company registration, and multiple signed authorization letters bearing her name. She stepped forward instinctively. That's not my signature. One investigator nodded. We'll confirm through handwriting analysis. More files surfaced from Daniel's briefcase. Loan agreements, property application forms, digital transaction slips. Each document painted a clearer pattern. Daniel had not acted impulsively. He had prepared. Weeks, possibly months, of structured attempts to convert her assets into accessible collateral. In the bedroom wardrobe, beneath folded shirts, they found a flash drive taped to the inner panel. It contained scanned versions of the same forged agreements plus bank communication drafts requesting account consolidation under joint authority. Lydia read quickly, face tightening with professional disappointment rather than shock. He intended to establish financial dependency, she said. Once the property became marital collateral, defaults would attach to you automatically. Pamela sat slowly on the staircase step. So the accusations, she murmured. Pressure strategy, Lydia replied. If you left voluntarily, possession would appear uncontested. Another officer approached. We also received confirmation from 2 banks tonight. Applications already flagged for fraud. Pamela closed her eyes briefly. The months of arguments reorganized themselves in her mind. Not emotional reactions, but timed distractions. Every confrontation had coincided with financial submissions she never knew existed. The investigator continued. There's more. He submitted an insurance beneficiary amendment, naming himself primary over business assets. Lydia exhaled slowly. That alone carries serious charges. By dawn, the house no longer felt like a home, but a case file. Daniel remained in custody overnight. The following week, formal charges were filed: fraud, forgery, attempted property conversion, financial misrepresentation, and unlawful entry. News spread quietly, first among family, then wider through professional circles. Not public scandal, Lydia ensured proceedings remained procedural, but undeniable. Daniel's business partners distanced themselves immediately once documents surfaced showing misrepresented capital sources. Several creditors joined the complaint after learning the guarantees referenced Pamela's company without consent. Court hearings began within a month. Pamela attended only when required. She wore neutral clothing, not her own designs. She answered questions briefly. Each time Daniel tried to meet her eyes across the courtroom, she looked only at the judge. Forensic experts confirmed forged signatures across 12 documents. Digital timestamps revealed edits performed from Daniel's laptop during hours he claimed to be traveling for work. The attempted joint property registration carried a backdated purchase date, 6 months before their marriage. Yet the ink and print composition showed recent creation. Piece by piece, intention replaced doubt. Daniel's defense shifted repeatedly: misunderstanding, marital rights, clerical error, emotional distress. None aligned with the evidence. After 6 months, criminal proceedings moved forward independently while the civil process began. The divorce petition was filed citing financial abuse, deception, and endangerment of personal assets. Daniel did not contest at first, then attempted negotiation through intermediaries, proposing private settlement. Pamela declined. She had learned negotiations were his tools. The court ordered full financial separation and forensic audit of shared accounts. The results confirmed withdrawals routed into accounts linked to his undisclosed debts. By the 9th month, the judge delivered the ruling. The marriage was dissolved. No shared ownership of the house. No financial claim over her business. Restitution ordered for unauthorized transactions. Daniel's liabilities remained his alone. Pamela listened without visible reaction, hands resting calmly in her lap, as if attending a business meeting rather than the legal end of her marriage. Outside the courthouse, Lydia finally spoke softly. "It's finished." Pamela looked at the sky, bright, ordinary afternoon traffic moving around them. "Yes," she said, but her voice carried neither relief nor triumph, only certainty. She returned to work the following week. The studio reopened fully after months of reduced operations. Clients returned cautiously at first, then confidently once they realized her silence had been strength, not scandal. The house remained hers again, legally, completely, yet she moved through its rooms differently now, aware how easily familiarity could be weaponized. 3 weeks after the ruling, an envelope arrived addressed in unfamiliar handwriting. Inside was a notice from a rehabilitation counseling program requesting confirmation that she had recommended Daniel for behavioral financial therapy during sentencing considerations. Pamela read it twice before folding it carefully. Pamela kept the envelope on her work table for 2 days before responding. She did not open it again immediately after the first reading. Instead, she returned to scheduled fittings, adjusted waistlines, approved bead placements, and met brides whose worries revolved around flowers and guest lists rather than signatures and affidavits. Work grounded her, not as escape, but as structure. On the 3rd morning, she signed the confirmation. Daniel had requested placement in a behavioral rehabilitation program focused on compulsive financial deception and manipulative dependency patterns. During sentencing review, the court allowed reduced custodial time if structured counseling and monitoring were completed. Her recommendation was optional. She still signed it. 2 weeks later, a call came from an unfamiliar number. "Good afternoon. Is this Pamela Nwoy?" "Yes. My name is Noah. I coordinate the accountability program Daniel was admitted into. I wanted to thank you." She paused, unsure what gratitude meant in this context. "I didn't do it for him," she replied. "I know," Noah said gently. "You did it to close a cycle. Most people refuse entirely. Your cooperation allowed structured treatment instead of repeat escalation. She leaned against the studio window, watching traffic crawl below. Will it change him? A brief silence followed. No program promises change, Noah answered. It only removes denial. What happens after depends on him. She nodded, though he could not see it. Thank you for telling me, she said. Before ending the call, Noah added, there's also a support group for victims of financial and relational coercion. Many participants rebuilt stability faster after joining. You may find it useful. Pamela almost declined automatically. She had always handled problems privately. Strength, in her mind, meant containment. But that definition had cost her months of confusion. Send the address, she said. The first meeting felt unfamiliar. The room was small, not clinical, not dramatic, just arranged chairs in a circle inside a quiet counseling center. No one dressed to impress. No one asked about professions. Names were offered without titles. She listened more than she spoke. A retired teacher described how her nephew gradually redirected her pension. A shop owner explained how a partner convinced him to sign temporary guarantor papers. A young accountant spoke about passwords slowly being taken under the name of trust. The stories were different but structurally identical. Affection used as access, then access used as control. When her turn came, Pamela hesitated. I wasn't physically harmed, she said first. The facilitator shook her head gently. Control has many forms. So she described documents appearing in banks she never visited, arguments timed to distract, accusations used to weaken confidence, and the night she met padlocks on her own door. No one gasped. No one doubted. Understanding did not require explanation in that room. After the session, a woman pressed a small card into her hand, a foundation that offered legal literacy workshops to prevent similar exploitation. You seem organized, the woman said. People will listen to you. Pamela kept the card. She attended weekly. Gradually, she noticed something shift. The story stopped replaying in her mind as a personal betrayal and began arranging itself as a pattern she now recognized. Once recognized, it no longer controlled her reactions. Months passed. Her business stabilized beyond previous levels. Ironically, transparency strengthened client trust. She introduced contract education sessions for brides handling large payments, teaching them to understand clauses before signing vendors. Then the idea expanded. She partnered with the counseling center to sponsor informational seminars, simple explanations about ownership, consent, and documentation. Not dramatic campaigns. Practical knowledge. She never mentioned Daniel publicly. The work did not require his name. 1 year after the night of the padlocks, Pamela walked through her house slowly, room by room. The place had become quiet in a different way. Not tense, not empty, just complete. Yet she realized she no longer needed it to anchor her life. Memory lived in the walls, but she no longer did. She contacted a real estate agent. The sale was voluntary, deliberate. No urgency, no escape, simply transition. The buyer admired the wide windows and renovated interior. They did not know its history, and she did not share it. Houses carried enough lives already. On the day documents transferred, she held the keys briefly before handing them over. This time she chose release rather than losing possession. Part of the proceeds went into expanding her studio. Another portion she set aside for something else. 2 months later, the counseling center hosted a community event. Not large, a hall, rows of chairs, informational banners. A new sign hung near the entrance. Financial Clarity Initiative, sponsored by House of Pamela. The program funded free consultations for individuals facing suspicious financial pressure within relationships. Lawyers volunteered hours weekly. Educational leaflets translated legal language into everyday understanding. During the opening session, Noah approached her again. You turned damage into infrastructure, he said. Pamela looked at the attendees, quietly reading pamphlets. No, she replied. I turned confusion into instruction. He nodded. That's rarer. She watched a young couple asking questions together at the registration desk, discussing agreements openly before signing anything. Preventive conversations, not corrective battles. For the first time, The memory of the locked door no longer tightened her chest. It had become reference, not wound. Later that evening, she left the hall alone, not out of isolation but choice. The city lights reflected off passing cars, ordinary life continuing around her without weight. Her phone vibrated once, a routine notification from her studio confirming a new bridal booking scheduled months ahead. She slipped it back into her bag. Her life no longer required reclaiming. She was simply living it forward,